possible. Obviously, the college scouting season is all year long, and these families, really sacrifice a lot. Their husbands away on the road a lot, and appreciate the coaching staff coming in, new staff, trying to install offense and defense, and really bending over backwards for us to, watch as many possible players as they can, getting a week off, going to pro days. It's just been a really good process with Coach Rabel, and we're excited about the guys we were able to add. Any questions?
We just start with maybe breaking down some of the players, start with Henderson.
Sure. Travion Henderson had a great career in high school. He was a 5-star running back coming out of Virginia. Continued on at Ohio State, started as a true freshman, played there for 4 years. Extremely productive player, extremely good speed, pass protection, pass game. Although he's a little bit undersized, we view him as a 3-down back, and just a really good complement. He's a threat with the ball in his hands, speed to take it the distance anytime he touches it. Yeah, Kyle Williams started his career at UNLV, ended up at Washington State, had a really productive junior year when Cam Ward was the quarterback there, and then continued that on this year. Fast, can play outside and inside, really good with the ball in his hands. For an undersized guy, he's really tough. He doesn't shy away from anything. He can block. And just had the opportunity to visit with him on his 30 visit here, and he really has a great personality, and we're excited about what he's going to add to the room from that perspective. And then Jared Wilson, just a young, athletic offensive lineman, has center guard flex. Just didn't give up a sack all year this year, and his athletic ability is really what stands out about him.
Eliot, do you anticipate any of these three to challenge for starting roles, or how do you see them possibly contributing?
Yeah, we see all of them with the ability to come in and compete. Obviously, with Coach Vrabel, it's going to be a blank slate, and everyone's going to come in and have the same opportunity. Certainly we have some established players at some of these positions, but each player is going to come in and we'll see what they can do.
You mentioned the idea of addressing the defense maybe on day 3. How do you feel like what you guys did over the first couple days sets you up for day 3?
Yeah, we were able to add a couple of picks. We added a 5th, and then we added another pick next year. So we were excited to be able to do that. And that's just kind of the way the board was dictated to us, the way it was stacked. So we feel fortunate about that. And then, the way the board's holding up right now, there's still some players that we feel can help us moving forward.
Eliot, you talked about Wilson, having center guard flexibility. Obviously you signed Bradbury. If he's the starter for this year, could you see Wilson getting a chance to compete at, say, left guard with the guys that you have there?
Yeah, I could see that being a possibility. Most of his experience has been at center in this past year, but he had played guard, or he was like basically the 6th man at Georgia prior to this year. So he's got experience practicing and playing at guard there. So I think center is ultimately going to be his best position, but we'll get him in here, see what he can handle mentally, and see what he can do.
Right now you have 10 receivers on the roster. Do you anticipate any moves there, maybe moving on from a veteran or two? And how do you see that in competition?
No, I see it as us being able to add depth and strengthen the group. Obviously Stefan's going to be limited as we move through the spring here, so we're still going to give those guys as many opportunities as we can.
Eliot, the broadcast showed you on the phone as the clock wound down to under a minute with that 38th overall pick. Can you take us through what was happening there on the phone and why you ended up on Travion?
Yeah, so some teams were talking about moving up, and ultimately we didn't feel that the value that was being offered to us was worth possibly losing out on Travion. So we just ended up sending the pick in and getting him on the phone with about 58 seconds left there.
You said with the other trades, it's kind of the way the board was stacked. Was that players coming off the board right before your pick and deciding to trade down, or having an idea that some of those guys would be available later on that you'd be interested in?
Yeah, a little bit of both. There were some guys that were drafted maybe not right before us, but a few picks before us, and then some teams. It was pretty active there in that 3rd round with teams trying to move around a lot. So some of the calls are kind of crazy, asking for stuff, because I feel like a lot of times people just look at their point chart and don't really use common sense at times. So there were some funny asks, but ultimately we feel like we did what was best.
Will Campbell said he had a meeting with you in week 5 this past fall, and he said get you basically. What was your experience like when it came to that conversation, maybe the evaluation process through the pre-draft?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was a meeting. I was at practice, and practice ended, and Sherman Wilson, works at LSU, brought Will over, and we had a conversation, and he told me that he really would love to be a New England Patriot, and I kind of just assumed at the time that he said that to every scout that came by. But we as some of those conversations continued, postseason, and seeing him at the combine and stuff like that, he was being genuine about it. He really was locked in on us, and we were locked in on him for a long time too.
With Campbell, his wingspan would be a bit of a historical outlier at that position. How do you view that information, and did that give you any pause at any point throughout the evaluation process?
I wouldn't say it gave pause. It's something that you kind of get that metric and you go back and look at it. I think we only started measuring wingspan like 10 years ago. So, historically for the last 10 years, maybe it's an outlier, but ultimately it always comes back to the tape and just some of his unique athletic ability and ability to bend and extend, even though he doesn't have that long wingspan. His ability to recover and his ability to anticipate. For a young guy, he's pretty polished for an offensive lineman. So we just kept coming back to the tape and seeing those things, and didn't think they affected him too much.
Hard not to notice the level of athleticism that you had in all 4 picks, and maybe even some speed. How important was that as you looked at your roster last year going into this offseason, saying we got to get faster, we got to get a little more explosive?
Yeah, it's definitely an emphasis. All 4 of the guys we picked can run. Probably doesn't matter as much for the offensive lineman unless there's a turnover. But the 2 skill players we drafted, even Kyle, I think ran 4.45, and Travion ran 4.41. But I think when you watch the film, I think we both expected those guys to run faster. So I think their play speed is really what stands out about them too.
Hey, Eliot,
Go ahead, John.
First off, good to see you, man.
Thanks.
A few weeks back you talked about taking the best player on the board in certain parts of the draft. Is that the case with Travion? Because going in, running back might not have necessarily been a need per se, but in that instance, did you guys look at the board and say, he's the best player here, we're going there?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what we did. We just felt like his ability to, it's a deep draft for running backs. There's still some guys up there that we feel like could help us, but just his ability to be a threat and make huge plays was something that stood out with him versus the rest of the class.
Eliot, Kyle's ability to beat man coverage, how much did that appeal or factor into his evaluation?
Yeah, quite a bit. His ability to, win off the line with his releases and accelerate, his ability to stem guys at the top of the route. There's still some things that he could work on and clean up, which I'm sure Todd and Josh will work on him with. But that was something that stood out to us throughout the process.
With Travion, how much does his leadership and his maturity factor into the evaluation?
Yeah, we feel like all 4 of the guys we drafted are good people. That's obviously an emphasis moving forward, getting the right type of people in to fit the culture. And Travion, he's a senior, which is pretty rare in this draft so far. But the time we spent with him was pretty good.
Eliot, along those lines, Travion said he had kind of limited contact with you guys before the draft. What goes into that evaluation when you maybe haven't met with the player as much personally?
Yeah, I feel like Travion maybe forgot one of the meetings because Coach Downing met with him at Ohio State, and he didn't mention that. But we'll have to talk to Todd. Maybe he wasn't wearing his Patriots shirt. But no, we spent time with him, and obviously we have ample connections with Ohio State. Not only Vrabel, but Stretch, Cam Williams. Both those guys are Ohio State alum, and we have a really good relationship with those people over there. And obviously this was a great year to have those connections with them winning the national championship, and obviously the number of players that are going to be drafted from there.
By drafting Wilson, does that allow Cole Strange to go back to the left guard where he started, or do you still see him competing at the center position?
Yeah, we see versatility is the name of the game here. So we feel like Cole obviously has the experience at guard primarily, got that great experience at center last year. So we feel like he can compete at both spots.
Eliot, when you look at your depth chart at this point, and obviously these guys have to get in the building and everything like that, but it looks like you've addressed just about every need in this, from defensive free agency to offensive line, wide receiver. Do you feel like to this point in this offseason that you guys have been successful in sort of, getting together a team that can compete tomorrow if they had to?
We do. That was obviously an emphasis, and that's something that we came up short with last year. So moving forward, I still think there are a bunch of areas that we can add depth to, and there's some areas, particularly on defense, that we feel like we need to shore up a little bit.
With your receivers, I think you probably have like 1 year experience starting center. To use one of your top 100 picks on him, what was it about him that really stood out that made you guys kind of want to go for him and take him despite not having maybe as much on film?
Yeah, I mean, he's still a young guy, so I think your point about playing 1 year is kind of maybe what we liked a little bit, is just the upside, the trajectory for him to have the success he had this year as a first-year starter. You know, we think that the sky's the limit for him, especially with his unique athletic ability, and he's big. I mean, he's 310 pounds, so.
Eliot, whether this was a trade or a pick you made or a trade or a pick that didn't happen, what was the hardest decision tonight?
The hardest decision tonight was what to eat. I wasn't really excited about some of the choices in there, but eventually no. In all honesty, there was some really good conversations before our first pick with Coach Vrabel and Ryan and Cam and Matt and Alonzo. Just there was a little bit of a debate about who we were going to pick, and ultimately one of the players we were talking about got drafted, so it didn't end up mattering. But I think it was a really good step in the right direction just for us working together in our relationship as, you know, coworkers, and because we have to have productive disagreements for this to work. Like, we can't just agree on everything. We can't just acquiesce to each other on something. So I think it was really productive from that standpoint.
Get a name of the player?
No.
Was there a worst trade offer for you guys?
Was there there were actually, I would say there were more trade offers tonight than I would say was normal. No, I mean, there were some that were just kind of like, you don't even have to think about it. Like, sometimes you get off the phone and you're like, hey, let me check on that, I'll call you right back. And there were a couple that were just like, nah.
Are there any thoughts of moving up the board to snag someone that you had targeted?
Yeah, we had some of those conversations, and, you know, again, they were probably saying the same thing that I just said about us. Like, that's not enough. But ultimately, it just didn't work out in that fashion.
Between Travion and Jared, they've won national championships, been on national championship rosters. Will's played in big games. Is there something to be said about guys winning championships and bringing that in here?
Yeah, I think it's winning championships and also the pedigree of some of these guys. You know, Georgia, Ohio State, LSU. You know, even Washington State played some big games. So I think when you have that pedigree, I think it gives, you know, these guys come in a little bit more ready maybe than some guys from some other schools.
Do you feel you've gravitated toward the offensive side of the ball because you think they can directly support Drake? Is it easier to pull the trigger on maybe an offensive player versus a defensive player at the same spot?
I mean, again, sometimes it's just how the board works out. Again, we're not necessarily drafting for need, but we're drafting with our current roster in mind. So, you know, obviously some of these guys, you know, like you said, maybe the running back position wasn't like a top need, but it was certainly somewhere, you know, we wanted to add speed to the roster, to your point. So here's a fast guy that plays running back that can really help us. It's a really good player. It's a good person. So there you go.
Obviously, quarterback wasn't a big need, but what's the reaction to seeing Shedeur Sanders go on the board?
It's surprising. You know, we evaluated him. I had the opportunity to watch him play against Oklahoma State this year, and you know, they killed Oklahoma State. So it maybe wasn't the best game to look at, but it was interesting to see that he's still available, and I'm sure there's going to be a fit for him here tomorrow.
With Travion, you said that despite him being a little bit undersized, you see him as a three-down back. What is it about him that you think he can do that?
Well, from as far as a third down standpoint, he's a really good pass protector. He can run routes. He can catch the football. But he can also run inside. Like, he's not like a grinder between the tackles power runner, but he has good vision. He hits the hole hard. He has good feet. And obviously he has the speed to run outside. So we just feel like he has that toughness and versatility.
Your final question?
You mentioned defense is a focus tomorrow, and you had a lot of picks. Do you feel like you're prepared to go up and target specific players to position with that extra capital that you have, maybe in the fourth and fifth round?
Yeah, certainly we have that option. I mean, I think we're up fourth tomorrow, so I wouldn't imagine we'll go up from there. But with having 3 5s, we have some flexibility to maybe go up if the board, you know, kind of dictates that there's someone that we can't live without. Good?
Thanks, Dory.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks.